Today, I'll speak on translation. The title of my topic is Translation Exploring the Dynamic Space. Translation is performed on two languages, the source language and the target language. Translation transfers the meaning from the source language to the target language. Translating a literary work of art is difficult. In literary translation, text is vital. Literary translation is different to pragmatic translation. Translation and transcreation are different. Translation provides freer hand to the writer. Transcreating text is not rigid, it's flexible. Transcreation is in a way rewriting of the text. Transcreator has to look beyond the more stratification of linguistic structure. He looks for all the gaps and fissures, and thus the plurality of textual interpretation takes place. And here, transcreation becomes a sort of cultural study. The historians have ignored the fact that translation has played a major role in the development of national and international cultures. Culture travels through translation, and the translator maneuvers on the tightrope of two diverse cultures at the same time. Translation plays a fundamental part in transition of literary movements, ideologies, sociological changes in the multicultural global context. In reality, we are all translated men. Translation activity has now taken on a multi-dimensional development pertaining not only to the domain of literary, scholar or linguistic approach, but is spread out to the ever-expanding cultural context. The language are never similar to be considered as representing the same socio-cultural reality. Hence, translation can be interpreted in different ways. Translation is a major force in the study of culture and comparative literature. Multiculturalism cannot be complete without translation activity. English translation of so many Indian regional texts contributes much to the awareness of the variety of Indian culture. Due to emergence of multilingual and multinational society, the need for interaction and being aware the culture of each linguistic group has arisen to a greater extent. In making the world smaller and bridging the gulf between cultures, translation becomes the manifest of civilized activity. The immense contribution towards the process of multiculturalism has brought translation close up front in creating the cultural, sociological as well as literary brotherhood. The role of translation is being celebrated world over as it is fundamental to the existence of the immigrants, crossovers, diasporas and bilinguals. Traditional marginalization of translation has to be challenged with new approaches to explore the dynamic space that lies between the original work and translation. Translation helps closing the distance between self and other, that is unknown to known, unexplored to explore. Translation transcends so many borders that are language, civilization, culture, etc. There was a time when translation used to be viewed as a secondary literary activity and the translator slightly inferior to creative writers. Translation, however, has begun to receive better attention, and its role of bringing language, communities and cultures together has begun to be acknowledged, thanks to the individual efforts of dedicated translators. Translation studies are fast becoming an important chapter of literary and culture theory, and in recent years, special attention has been paid to the relationship between colonialism, post-coloniality, and translation. Translation is being increasingly recognized as a cultural activity involving not merely literary texts but cultural codes and practices, whether used as an implicit mode of literary creation in post-colonial writing or as an explicit source of inspiration in various modes of border writing, translation, and whether used as an implicit mode of literary creation in post-colonial writing or an explicit source of inspiration in various modes of border writing, translation inhabit many contemporary texts. Terms like transcreation, transmutation, transculturation, dismemory, and even transfusion, rewriting, and new writing have been used to suggest the creative aspects of translation. There are cases where even the author feels that a translation is better than the original, as in the case with Gabriel Garcia Marquez, that had admitted that the English version of 100 Years of Solitude is definitely richer than its original in linguistic and semiotic qualities. Translation is now seen as a recomposition of the text in another language where qualities are different from those of the original. The translation thus is looking for parallel expression. The Indian tradition has always acknowledged translation as a creative activity. Our greater poets, often considered the founders of our languages, have been translators. But we have always called Tulsidas, Chaitanya, Sarladas, Kamban, Pampa or Ezhutharan poets. To call their translation would be sacrilege. Perhaps it was the influence of the West that made us look down upon translation as only second to creation. We are just beginning to free ourselves of the colonial perception and restore the original liberal attitude towards translation and an expression of freedom. Translation from Sanskrit, Persian and English, the three successive languages of power, enriched modern Indian languages by their influence. The various translations of the Fitzgerald version of Omar Khayyam in Hindi become part of the target language. Octavio Paz believes that there are no originals. He is of the opinion that the world is presented to us as a growing heap of texts, each slightly difficult from the one that came before it. Translation of translations of translations. Here translation is seen as a primary activity, far from being marginal. Translation is viewed now as a dialogue where the translator is an all-important reader and as free an agent as a writer. That translation became part of the colonial discourse of Orientalism is obvious from late 18th century British efforts to obtain information about the people ruled by the merchants of the East India Company. A scholar connected with University of Edinburgh urged the British sovereign in 1783 and again in 1788 to take steps as may be necessary for discovering, collecting and translating whatever is the extent of the ancient work of the Hindus. Although the translators hoped that by these translations, European astronomy, antiquities and other sciences would be advanced, it became clear in the project of William Jones, who arrived in India in 1783 to take his place on the bench of the Supreme Court in Calcutta, that translation would serve to domesticate the Orient and thereby turn it into a province of European learning. Translation, in the narrowest sense of the word, that is to turn something from one language into another, or interlingual translation, has traditionally been viewed by literary critics in the West as the noble task of bridging the gap between people as the humanistic enterprise. Social anthropologists and ethnographers, since the beginning of their discipline in the 19th century, have also seen the risk as humanism in its desire to provide a body of knowledge about unknown people. It is a task that anthropologists themselves would define as intercultural translation, or the translation of one culture into terms intelligible to another. So here we come to the end of our topic on translation. And translation has come to stay in a big way in postmodern world. Every day we are encountering real truth, real history, real philosophy or rewriting or whatever it is all because of translation. Whether it is from Persian to English or for Hindi to English or from any other language, we see that translation has come to stay. Now translation and transcreation are mingled together, and the authors, the translators, they become mingled with each other. Very recently, P. Lal, a great writer and publisher from Kolkata, who runs Writers' Workshop, has recreated Mahabharata in English, which has become very popular in our own world. And this translation has worked in literature, in cinema, in music, in dance, and also in theatre. So translation has come to stay. And now, as we say that English is not a language only, but it is a code. So translation is also a code these days. Thank you. Thank you very much.